Alright, so this is going to be part 4 to what if Deku had Overhaul. So with that being said, I got a few things I gotta say. First off, I'm almost done with the cover for Sorcerer Knights, and if you don't know what that is, that's actually the Black Clover original series that I'm going to do pretty soon. So if you want to help out on that, you can go to my Discord, because unlike UA Year 1, there isn't really a limit on how many characters we can get. And I don't want all the characters made by, only a couple of people. I want more variety and more kind of diversity in thought. So if you're really interested, you can go to the description and go to my Discord. Another thing is, pretty soon I'm gonna have a relative come over, and during that time I'm not gonna really be able to really do what ifs. So it's not gonna be too different to how my schedule has been in the past, really, with like maybe once a video a week. I'm pretty sorry. I wanted to get more done, but I can't really do it with them around. So it's probably gonna be only maybe like a week. So bear with me, I guess. So so our story would basically begin a little bit after the the USJ attack. So this is around the same time Aizawa would actually do their kind of report to the school, basically telling what happened. And this actually gets the attention of Nezu, right? Because Nezu is also looking out for All Might, and basically asking or wanting to give him a person from UA, a student. Basically, he wants to scout for All Might as well, because at this time All Might is looking for a successor, right? But what Nezu doesn't know is that All Might already has a successor, and that is actually going to be Mirio Togeda. I believe that's how you say his name. So I'll say this at the end, but anyways, so Nezu basically brings up the idea to All Might, and All Might doesn't really remember Deku too much. Even after he saved himself during the Sludge Villain attack, he doesn't really remember him. He knows that Deku's in this class, right? For class 1A. Well, that really is it. He didn't really see him too much, or really remember him, because he's seen so many students at this point just going through different applications or seeing different files to basically get a successor. And he basically chose Mirio because of his personality, and that's really mostly it, and his quirk, maybe. So Nezu brings up this idea to All Might, and All Might's like, "Oh, young Midoriya? What about him?" And basically Nezu tells him about his quirk, and that he says that he's a pretty good idea for a successor since he has a pretty powerful quirk. And this is where All Might basically breaks the news to Nezu, saying that he already has a successor in Mirio. So what happens is that Nezu's like, okay, the one thing about this, All Might, and he pushes a file towards All Might, and this shows all the kind of feats that Deku has done. And he basically says to All Might that even if he can't be the successor, he has done things pretty, amazing, like this. And he shows all the things that he's done at the hospital, such as helping people with different injuries. So All Might's taken back by this, and he tells Nezu, or like he says, are you telling me that this boy can heal me? And Nezu's like, well, we can only try. It's shown to work on other living things. He should be able to heal you. So they basically, the next few days, a little bit before the announcement for the sports festival, they actually bring in Midoriya to the teacher's lounge, and they basically tell him that what they're going to show him, he can't really tell anyone else. And he agrees to this, and they basically show Deku All Might's kind of scar, and explain that he can't really do hero work as often as he would because of how this injury has affected him. So what happens is that they ask him to heal it if he could. So Deku basically says, okay, let me try it. So Deku would take off his glove and go over the kind of scar that was there, and what they would see is that they would just see All Might disappear for a second and then reform, just how Overhaul would do it, and then All Might would come back and the scar would be gone. Obviously, you can't make matter out of nothing, so what Deku does is that he takes parts from all around his body to basically heal this certain part of his body already. So it's not going to be a one and done thing, since there's so much that was lost there. He basically has to do this multiple times over a span of a couple, maybe like a week. So the reason for this is that he's taking cells from other parts of the body and putting it into it, but it doesn't complete it whole. So he's waiting for those cells to basically regenerate on other parts of his body, or split and make more, and then he's gonna do it again, and hopefully he should be able to do it by the second time. So he basically tells All Might, come back to me in like 3 days and I'll be able to do it again. So a few days would pass, and this is where Aizawa would actually tell the students that there's going to be a sports festival and that everyone needs to try their best, since this is the point in time where heroes are going to look for students for their internships, and they want everyone to do the best so that they could get the most amount of internships and decide whether or not to go with a certain hero or not. So at this point, everyone's excited for this and everyone's gonna train. So we get back to Deku and All Might, and at this point, Deku has been going over to All Might in the teacher's lounge to basically check up on what's happening. And I would say that Deku does have some medical knowledge, just being around the doctors and hospitals that he's been around. So he does know some things. He's not really trained at all, but he knows a little bit more than an average person would when it comes to first aid and things like that. So after this, Deku basically does the procedure again and heals All Might basically to complete, or to full health, and All Might feels a lot better than he's ever been. And Deku basically says, okay, you're gonna be healed, but I want to see what happens over the few days, and try not to push yourself really too much. So All Might agrees, and Deku leaves the teacher's lounge to go back to lunch. And as he's actually going to his regular table that he sits with Ida and Uraraka, this is where Momo actually sits down next to him and actually asks Deku to help her with her training, because they have similar quirks in nature in terms of being able to construct things. And Momo's pretty close to Deku. Deku's never really had this attention before, so he's kind of nervous, and he asks her why do you want me to help you? And this is where Momo basically explains that they have similar quirks to Deku. So Deku gets it and puts it together, and he says, okay, fine, I'll help you, but let me finish my lunch. So he does so, and Momo's still sitting there next to him, and he's kind of shy and doesn't really know what to do. So he basically has this awkward, they do some awkward conversation between each other to kind of pass the time, and then Ida and Uraraka are just watching this, and both of them are kind of embarrassed as well. We get to the next day, and this is where Deku's basically training with Momo. So this is the week that is, they're off because of the attack, as well as time for them to train. So he asks Momo, what do you want to train first? And she says that she wants to work on her quirk and things like that. So Deku's, okay, Deku's like, alright, so what do you usually make? So she shows that she usually makes the kind of pole and sometimes a shield and maybe a sword, because at this point she hasn't really shown off too much, at least in the at this point in the anime. So Deku's like, okay, so you have the ability to create any inorganic object. Mine is to reshape matter. So Deku's thinking of ways of using this, right? So he asks her, like, have you ever, reabsorbed your materials back into your body? And she says no, that she's never tried that, and she doesn't think she could do that. And then he asks her, have you ever tried changing the item that you have in your hand that's already outside your body? And she said no, she hasn't tried that either. So I'm getting a little bit inspiration from the actual game, My Hero Academia One's Justice, because I recently got the second one. So in that actual game, if you play as Momo and you have one of her weapons out, you can actually change it in her hand mid-fight to like 3 different things, that being the pole, the sword, and then I believe like a spear like thing. I know it is like a game and it isn't canon, but I want to go with that. So we're gonna have this kind of little upgrade to Momo's quirk, that being that she's able to change the anything that she produces with her quirk. She's able to change outside of the quirk to a certain extent, right? She won't be able to create new matter, and she won't be able to make it into new matter. Like, let's say she can't turn metal into wood, or not wood because she can't make that anyways. Like, she can't make a certain like metal into plastic or plastic into metal and things like that. So that's what she learns that she could do. So Deku basically tells Momo, since you have this new knowledge, you should try to work not only on your quirk but also on your physical abilities, because your quirk is to create objects, right? You're not going to be able to, if you're not, physically fit enough to get close to your opponent, you're not going to be able to use these tools at your disposal. So that's really what they try to do. They work on a lot of fitness, even Deku, because at this point it makes him, it's a lot better for him to get stronger physically so that he can react to people faster and things like that. So after the week, people can tell that both Momo and Deku are getting closer to each other, and Deku can kind of see this as well, because at this point neither of them were really too close beforehand. They didn't really talk, so the only way they were really talking was some business about the classroom, because both of them are representatives, but outside of that they didn't really talk. I believe I made them both representatives, or at least Deku is, and Momo did win second place in the anime, so she should be the vice representative for the class. So yeah, so they get to the day of the sports festival, so this is after the week, and they're basically in that room to get ready to go out. So this is the changing room, I believe. So they're basically talking about how they're going to do their best on the sports festival, or during the sports festival, and this is where Todoroki actually goes up to Deku and basically says, you might have a strong quirk, right, but I'm going to win this and prove to him that I'm actually going to be able to become the number 1 hero without using his quirk. And Deku's kind of confused by this because he hasn't talked to Todoroki, and Todoroki hasn't really talked to many people. And not only that, but he doesn't know who him is, or he is, like the person that Todoroki was talking about. So he's a bit confused and doesn't really know what to say. So Deku doesn't really say anything and just looks at Todoroki kind of confused. And this is where Bakugo basically breaks in between the conversation and actually interrupts Todoroki. Basically says, I'm gonna beat both of you, so don't even think about winning. So Deku kind of smiles a bit, thinking that this is classic Bakugo, and after this they're actually called out to do the speech. So since Deku was number one during the kind of during the entry exam, he is actually the one doing the speech. So he basically says that he knows that everyone's been training, and even he had to train quite a bit just for this special event, and that he hopes that anyone can really win this, because he knows that a lot of people have done a lot of work for this particular event. After hearing this, the crowd would really like what Deku was saying, and they would cheer. So when he was done with his speech, this is when we would get to the next event, which would be the first one, and that is the obstacle race. So Midnight would be the one counting down for the for the race to start. So after she would do that, this is where most of the students would get clustered in that gateway trying to get out, with a few of class 1A students able to go over the groups. So what Deku would do in this instance is that he would basically warp the ground that was there to push out everyone out of the kind of gateway, and then he would just kind of use his quirk to basically slide around the ground, kind of like land surfing, like I said in the last one, and that's how he'd get around pretty quickly. So it's really easy for him to do this, and I would say this would be pretty fast, considering how fast the spikes were able to go during the overhaul fight. So it's pretty fast, considering it does take a lot of reaction time, or pretty fast reaction time, to get past Overhaul's attacks. So I'm pretty sure this being a simple thing of just moving would just be just as fast, if not a little bit faster. So this is when the 0 pointers would come out. Deku, or first Todoroki, would be in the front, using this opportunity to basically just freeze the target and show off his power, and the other class 1As would use this to get past the 0 pointers as well. While Deku, him catching up, he would just touch the side of the robots, and then they would just turn into basically nothing. They would kind of explode, but not really in a violent way, the same way that Overhaul would make someone disappear by just touching them and making them kind of their molecules just go everywhere. So that's basically what Deku does with his quirk. So he would get past this, and he would start to catch up with Todoroki and Bakugo, and they would get to the point where they're at the minefield. So Deku, he's actually able to get past this pretty quickly, using the ground to move the mines out of the way, while also not really I guess at this point he wouldn't really need to touch the ground. So think about it like this, right? He would actually use the ground to kind of lift himself up and kind of do like a trail of earth, kind of like how Iceman will use his ice to basically make a trail for him to go forward. It's similar to that, but with the rock or the earth that's basically underneath Deku. So this entire time he's like kind of kneeled down, touching the ground as he's using that to go over the minefield and using that to glide over it. Bakugo would see this, and he would try to shoot the piece of ground that's actually like connecting it to the actual earth, and he would do that, and this would cause a bit of an explosion behind Deku, pushing him forward, and he would use the remaining rock to basically shield him from the explosion while pushing him forward. So this ending part would be similar to what happens in actual canon, using the kind of piece of the robot to propel himself forward. So Deku would get in first, and I would say that Todoroki would get in second, and Bakugo would get in third. So Deku, he would basically heal himself using his quirk. So you would see like pieces of him. He would touch his like the wounds that he would have, and then they would disappear for a second and then reappear, and then people would be thinking like, whoa, what's this quirk? All the heroes that are watching, so they're very interested. And I think Momo would come up to Deku and ask if he was hurt, and she would see a few scratches here and there, and he would be like, no, it's fine, as he would like just touch them and they would just disappear and form back into like normal kind of skin. So she was kind of worried for his safety, but he assured her that there was nothing to be worried about. So we would get to the next part, and this is the cavalry battle. So the teams would basically be the same, with Deku, Uraraka, and both Tokoyami and Mine Hatsume. So that's really what the teams are going to be. So the other teams would be the same. Deku in this one would not be the head, since for him to use his quirk he really needs to be closer to the ground. So I think in this case he would use Tokoyami as the head, just so that he would have more ways of guarding himself with Dark Shadow, as well as letting Uraraka be able to touch everyone at once easier, and letting her quirk be able to be used more often, I guess. So right as the timer starts, this is where Deku would basically touch the ground and form a bunch of walls in between them and everyone else. So Bakugo is still kind of mad at Deku, and he doesn't really know why. It's not the only reason he could think of is that he thinks he's really insecure at this point. He thinks Deku thinks of himself better than him, and there's not really a reason to hate Deku. Deku forgave him for what he did in his middle school years, and yet he still feels this way, and he doesn't know why. He just wants to beat Deku in some way. So he would go for Deku first, destroying a few of the walls, and this is where Monoma would take advantage of this and actually copy Bakugo's quirk and use it against him while taking his bandana, when Bakugo is filled of rage and not really thinking too well. So Bakugo would mainly focus on Monoma and trying to get his headband back, while Todoroki would basically go directly for Deku, using his eyes to tear down the walls and eventually get to Deku. So by the time this is kind of the dome or the kind of walls have been taken down, when they get to the center of where all the walls are protecting, they actually see that there's no one inside, and this is actually because Deku or Uraraka was using her quirk of zero gravity and used it to propel themselves upwards to the sky, and using Mine's kind of hover boots to stabilize the flight, since it wouldn't be too hard to do. So they would see that both Todoroki, or they would see that that group of Dekus would be in the sky, and Todoroki would try to use his eyes to kind of shoot him down, but it wouldn't really work with Dark Shadow being there. So at this point, I think Uraraka would get nauseous, because I'm pretty sure that has a time limit on it. I'm not too sure. If I remember right, it has to do with time as well. So after this, they would start to slowly fall, and they think that Todoroki's gonna get them, and so Todoroki's still shooting at them, and they're kind of trying to get him. So what Deku does is that he touches the side of the wall right when they're falling, the walls that he already pre-built, and actually uses that to make a kind of slide for them to kind of cushion the fall and slide them away from Todoroki. And by the time this is actually done, this is where Monoma would have gotten beaten by Bakugo, and the timer would have gone out, with the 3 top places still being the same, that being Todoroki or Deku in first place, then followed by Todoroki, and then Bakugo in third. So yeah, so this is where I'm actually going to end it. So if you guys want another part, you can tell me down below, as well as telling me how the story should go, because I'm really curious on how people think the story should go, as well as, you know, other what ifs I should do, doing others, or doing the next parts of ones I have done, and things like that. Remember, if you like the video, give it a like. If you like my content, subscribe for more, as well as commenting down CS to make sure that I know that you made it to the end of the video and that you support the channel. So with that being said, join the Discord if you want to help out with original series that I do in the future. And yeah, this is gonna be in the video. So yeah,